Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of this committee. I'm grateful for the privilege to testify before this committee and for your attention to the issue of campus anti-Semitism. My name is Meirav Batsheva Solomon. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm a junior at Tufts University studying international relations. I'm a proud Jewish American and the daughter of 2 conservative rabbis. I'm grateful for the tradition I grew up in, the values and ethics it instilled in me, and for the Jewish community I have found at Tufts. I'm here to share how I and other Jewish students experienced the increase in anti-Semitic incidents. Since October 7th, we've seen some rhetoric at anti-war protests cross the line into ugly stereotyping, hateful vitriol on social media, and violent threats against Jewish students. For me, for my friends, for my community, the issue of anti-Semitism is heartbreakingly personal and real. Too many protesters have embraced anti-Semitic tropes or conflated the government of Israel with Jewish people around the world. But we cannot give up on the colleges and universities we call home. We have no common cause with those who want to discredit or defund higher education. Protecting education, civil rights, and open dialogue is vital to my future and to the ability of Jewish students to succeed and thrive. The vast majority of our classmates are not Hamas-aligned radicals. They're students whose perspectives may differ from ours, but must be welcome as long as they voice them respectfully. When my grandparents applied to college, anti-Semitic quotas kept them from getting a fair shake. We shouldn't let the hateful ideas of a small minority of students be a reason to dismantle the education they fought so hard for. Anti-Semites ascribe many sins to Jews. They charge us with deicide and propagate myths of blood libel. They blame us for capitalist excess or for communist plots, for rootless globalism or dual loyalty. But Congress and the Trump administration are abandoning the most effective tools the government has to fight anti-Semitism in all of its forms. The Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights handles cases of discrimination and harassment against Jewish students, providing a crucial avenue for Jews and other minorities to advocate for our rights. This administration has suspended thousands of OCR investigations and no longer allows students or their families to file complaints. And now the office's future is uncertain. By threatening to withhold federal funds from universities that do not scrap their DEI programs, this administration is threatening the future of Holocaust awareness and anti-Semitism education on campus. This administration seems determined to sacrifice resources that keep Jewish students like me safe at the altar of their culture war. This president is taking a cue from the Heritage Foundation's Project Esther, developed by a task force that includes Christian nationalists without any major Jewish organization's input. Project Esther blames the spread of anti-Semitism on us. It completely ignores any anti-Semitism on the right, where year after year, the vast majority of violent incidents occur. As the president's close advisors raise their arms in fascist salutes, bigots on social media glorify Nazis and denigrate Jews, and white nationalist groups stage xenophobic rallies, we must be honest about the most urgent threat to the Jewish community. It is not student protesters, but the bloody legacy of Pittsburgh and Poway, Charlottesville, and the Capitol riot. I cannot blame Jewish students who, amid growing right-wing terror, see this fixation on campuses as more about someone else's political agenda than our safety. True support for Jewish students like me means listening to our diverse experiences and needs and not using us to advance partisan agendas. Our parents and grandparents fought for the right to a quality education for Jews and for all Americans. The actions of this administration are divisive, and they erode the civil rights and basic freedoms that have allowed American Jews to flourish. Our right to a thriving, equal future depends on your commitment to protect the values of pluralism and democracy in which Jews and all Americans can thrive. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. If you truly want to stop anti-Semitism, you at least have to leave open the possibility that there will be some way to litigate your case. Ms. Solomon, have you seen this experience?
Yes, I have seen this experience across campus. The fear for Jewish students to now report and be able to access avenues of advocacy, to be able to advocate for themselves on college campuses, whether they face anti-Semitism on the right or the left, has been severely harmed by this current administration.
Ms. Solomon, I want to be sure I understand your testimony. Did I understand you to testify that anti-Semitism is worse under the Trump administration?
Senator, thank you for your question.
You don't have to thank me.
Okay.
Your best thanks is to answer.
Okay, well, I'll tell you that anti-Semitism has been rising, especially since the 2017
But has the Trump
Charlottesville attack.
administration caused that? Is that your testimony?
I wouldn't say the Trump administration has caused anti-Semitism. Has there been an increase since Trump has entered office? Yes.
Do you see a causal connection there?
Yes.
Why?
Trump has highlighted and platformed neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
Okay.
Ms. Solomon, do you think schools and universities are doing enough education on civil discourse?
Thank you so much, Senator Hirono, for the question. I do think some universities, like my own university, Tufts University, is doing a remarkable job of educating its students about their civic duties in this country and beyond. But I do think there's always ways that we can do more. This past year, Tufts University established an educational initiative for its freshman orientation in which they included anti-Semitism education as well as education around Islamophobia. I think that this is a model for other colleges and universities to adapt to their own campuses in order to stem the tide of hate crimes across this country.
How do you comprehend the challenge, and why does it seem so much more prevalent on institutions known for their academic excellence?
Thank you so much, Senator, for the question. I think centers of academic excellence, such as our institutes of higher education in this country, are places of dialogue, and dialogue can sometimes enter spaces, unfortunately, of hatred and division if they are not facilitated correctly and with empathy and with nuance. You asked me to speak a little bit about anti-Semitism on the left that I've seen on my college campus, which is sometimes a little bit harder to root out because it's not as openly Nazi-like as the right-wing anti-Semitism we see today that is supported by people, as you have mentioned. Many Jewish students, including myself, have been excluded from certain progressive groups on campus. I personally know also students who have been bullied out of housing because their affiliation with Jewish groups. And this has nothing to do with Israel. This simply has to do with us being Jewish. It also means, Tufts University also had an issue with student groups boycotting different Jewish groups on campus, simply, again, because they are Jewish, nothing to do with Israel-Palestine or their conflict. I do want to say that I'm really thankful to be here as the only student on this panel to represent a student experience that I think is actually part of the vast majority of student experiences, but has not been heard previously in previous committee hearings because it is much easier to listen to students who are on the more extreme or radical side. It is much harder to listen to students like me who have a much more nuanced perspective and nuanced experience over the past year and a half.
Ms. Solomon, can you just give us some sense of what you think endangers dialogue among students? You've got a lot of experience at Tufts. Are there things that we can do that allow for robust debate but mutual respect?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator Welch. I think that, as you said before, universities must differentiate between protective speech and threats of violence. But I think what's even more important is that dialogue can be had, best be had, on the basis of education. If we are not aware of what is happening, we cannot have constructive dialogue about what is happening. And what I find issue with is when we are actively seeing people advocate for the cutting of federal funding to OCR, which is free and is often the only way for Jewish students to access avenues of advocacy, we are seeing that being threatened. I don't understand how we are able to encourage higher education institutes to be able to have these dialogues if there are so many political leaders advocating for the foundation of them to be cut off.
That was very helpful.